Okay.
Guys, good afternoon and welcome to the COVID conversations. My name's Kyl Reber. I'm here in the backyard of my beautiful Brisbane house that is getting renovated as we speak. But it's not about me. This is about a conversation with some people who hold near and dear to me that I have come to know over many, many years. And this gentleman is no exception. I still have pictures of Blitz magazine with him with his shirt off, which we've spoken about earlier, that maybe we won't talk about previous comments about his wife saying with his shirt off lately. But I've known this guy, I've known this guy as a martial artist since I was probably about 15 or 16 years old, watching him in films. And I have been extremely, extremely fortunate over the last, 26 years, but probably the last 10 in particular, to get to know him very, very well, that I would go so far as to call him a good mate. Richard Norton, it is a pleasure to have you join me.
Mr. Reber, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on with you and having this chat.
Now, you are sitting in your beautiful house in Melbourne with your wife, Judy, only bugging you at certain intervals that you haven't done your allocated chores.
Mm-hmm.
So I do respect Judy as well for allowing me to have you for about 45 minutes to an hour. I know you have a very tough schedule happening, but
she's not unhappy to have the relief. We have it over here, so let's go on.
As we said, just remember she is within throwing distance. There could be a shoe come across the screen at any point.
As you know, Kyl, your wife will always be one dan higher, no matter how high you get. Will be one dan higher. That's just the nature of happy wife, happy life. You know.
Don't I know it? Don't I know it? I had to teach mine how to fight, and the rest is history. All right, now let's jump straight into the questions, because there is a lot that I want to talk to you about. The barbecue intro. I've got a coffee. It's still a little bit too early for a beer. G'day, mate. My name's Kyl. What's your name? What do you do?
G'day, mate. Do I have to talk like that? Do I have to talk like you?
Oh, well, that's the Queenslander in me. You've lived away a little bit, but you still got a solid Australian accent.
Yeah, but I'm a little more refined than you. I think that's what it gets down to, Kyl.
Want to feel good about yourself, people? Just keep listening.
My name is Richard Norton. I'm predominantly a martial artist. Been a martial artist since 11 years of age. Started with judo, started karate in my mid-teens, and am still a martial artist to this day. Do you want me to go into depth on that? Started again with Tino Seberano, as did Soke Bob. Tino Seberano later Sal Ebenez. We trained in Goju-Ryu, or Goju-Kai it was called then, more school. And started Zendo Kai together in 1970, which is now known as BJMA. And its style is this today. Style is still just as strong today. And it's a style that Bob, myself, and Soke Billy and others still head up to this day. Along the way, I went to the States in 1979, and we can get into detail of that later, through an introduction from Chuck Norris. Bob brought Chuck out in 1978 to do demos in Australia. And we got on really well, formed a great friendship. Chuck said, if you get to California, make sure you look me up. I'll do some training, which was like, you know, what an amazing invitation that was. I went to the States in 79 to work with Linda Ronstadt as personal bodyguard, started training with Chuck, got into movies, met amazing martial artists, Tadashi Yamashita, Bill Wallace, Benny the Jet, Urquidez, Fumi Demura, it goes on and on. Started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the late 80s with the legendary Rickson Gracie, have been doing Jiu-Jitsu over 30 years now, hold a 5th degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And there we go, that brings us to today. Got a level 6 with Aikido Khan, Benny Aikido's kickboxing curriculum. Got an 8th degree that was presented to me by Mr. Chuck Norris in the Chuck Norris system, or Chun Kuk Do. And what else? A 5th degree in Goju under Tino Seberano.
So it's been like you said, it's been the better part of 60 years. What you've been that guy that I guess, and I mean honestly, you know, I would have people, everyone agreeing with me, how even in the amount that you've achieved, you've still remained extremely humble. I have a very good picture.
Yeah. So,
What do I do? Is Judy laughing at us in the background?
well, I think she fainted when you said, oh God, I can't do this. Judy, go outside. Go out in the garden. Oh my God, she nearly passed out.
You'll feel better.
Oh my God, let's talk
Guys,
about
just so you know, prior to this interview, Richard was getting in trouble from Judy because he hadn't cleaned the mud off his shoes, and he was being chastised. I don't like. It's not that I relish from that, but I do like the fact that somebody of Richard's stature is still basically having those sorts of
yeah,
real world
he
problems.
beats down on a regular basis. Yeah. Oh, I told you, you know, for those who didn't tune in, Kyl knows I'd suggested when we did our Sunchin 3 battles thing last night, I said, maybe I'll take my top off to show how the midsection, everything, and the inhalation of air. And I said, oh, but I haven't been training like I should be. I'm starting to look like one of the kettlebells, you know, that I'm working out with. To which she replies, yeah, she said, it'd be pretty risky. I said, well, that's not exactly the feedback I was after, you know, pretty risky. Thank you very much for the confidence.
She's
She's
just looking out for you.
I put my shirt off a while ago, and she's looking at me. She said, what do you call those? And I said, oh, what do you mean, a six-pack? She said, oh, well, you've only got another 5 to go. So there you go. Keeps it real, mate. Keeps it very real.
Oh, that's what I love about this stuff. So getting back to it, I have a photo of you. When was it? 2018, I believe it may have been, when you did the couple of days at Smack Gym in Somerville with Alex Kostick.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very cool photo of you being so Alex Kostick, for those who don't know, is I guess another one of BJMA's mentors. And he is trained in a martial art called Sistema and is very, very apt at it. You were partnered. He called you up to be a partner for a demonstration. There is an element of martial artists that, not to be disrespectful, but it's more observational, maybe get to a point in their training where they go, that's it, I've done enough. I'm here. I've achieved what I need to achieve. But I was really taking account of you and Billy Monet that weekend, you guys asking questions, working together, laughing, moving around. And essentially after, well, 50 plus years at that time of training, you're still being a student. Is there ever a time that you go, I think well, not that I think I've learned enough, but is there a time where you go, I think that'll do it? Or do you just see something new and go, tell me about that, tell me about that?
Yeah, look, let me just say, Kyl, I hope that time never comes for me. I really hope that time never comes, because you've heard me say a lot, I believe it sounds a cliche, but it's about the journey. I always say that you stop being mediocre. Mediocrity, there's mediocrity everywhere in our world, in society, you know, with generally the way people behave. And I'm being, you know, I'm generalizing now, but there's an acceptance of, oh, I'm okay, I'm good enough, I've achieved enough, you know. And to some degree, I guess that gives a certain peace of mind, but I hate the word mediocrity, you know. I believe that excellence is unattainable, but the journey towards attaining that excellence is never ending, you know.
Yeah.
That's what you're striving to do. And I just, you know, people used to ask me, why did you start martial arts? Meaning, were you getting beaten up and all this stuff? I said, no, I didn't grow up in a rough neighborhood. I grew up in the suburb of Melbourne in Croydon. You know, a couple of young mates, and we'd run around and go up to the bush, chop trees down and have stone fights and all that sort of stuff. But it wasn't like I was getting beaten up by neighborhood gangs, so I had to learn how to fight. But when I did start martial arts, without getting into all the depth of it, I look back and I honestly believe it was what I was meant to do with my life. For whatever reason, as weird as that sounds, when I started judo at 11 and then karate, I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I want to do. And so my whole life has been in a journey. Everything I feel that I've ever achieved in my life that has been good, whether it's traveling the world as a bodyguard, you know, working with Jackie Chan and Chuck Norris and some of the best action people in the world in movies and going to various different countries, it's always been as a result of my through line of just trying to be the best martial artist I could be. And
And I
that doesn't mean that I'm saying, yeah, I'm amazing. I just wanted to be the best I could be. And to be the best you can be, I don't think you should ever have an attitude that you now know enough. There's a guy called Buckminster Fuller who wrote a book called The Critical Path. And he talks about, you know, a lot of things, procession, everything, but there's an interesting sort of take, and I'm paraphrasing now, on goal setting, that there's a reason that goals, usually when you attain them, are no longer as fulfilling as you originally thought they would be. And I'll give you an example. I might say I start karate and grew up in Croydon. Then I suddenly go, wow, you know, there's a Croydon karate championship. If I could go in that and win, that would be it. I'd be happy. I would really have achieved something. So I'd go in and win it. Suddenly it's just, now there's a Melbourne karate champ. You know what? I'm going to go in there. If I could just do that, I'd be happy. I'd really have achieved something in my martial arts and blah, blah, blah. And then I compete in Melbourne. Then suddenly, boy, maybe I could go in the Australian Championship and so on and so on. In other words, often those goals, when you reach them, are never as fulfilling you have. And the reason he says is that life is about bodies in motion. That the idea you get to a goal and don't say, that's it, I've achieved it, which would kind of figuratively mean you stop. Instead, you're propelled to another goal and another goal and another goal. And it's bodies in motion that life is about. And especially as a martial artist, I want to keep moving. You know, he talks about things, and I theorize that anything that stops still long enough is probably dead, whether
Mm.
it's a branch or a tree or a flower or a bird or an animal or a person. Usually when it stops still long enough, it's probably dead, you know? So this idea of continual motion and keeping bodies in motion, it always stuck with me. So what does that mean for me? It means that I just refuse to accept that I now know enough. I know there's more that I can learn. It just gets down to how badly do I want it? Well, I want it badly enough. You know, I want it badly enough that I'll go and train with Alex Kostic and get one little gem, you know, that I go, wow, that just blows my mind. How can I apply that to what I already do, you know, and make myself a little bit better in whatever regard? And that's kind of what I do. And you know, training with Alex, it's like, you know, it's a gold mine for me, because I want to understand, why is what he's doing any better than what I'm doing, or is it any better? You know, that exploration is just, that's the passion. I often
Mm.
say to people that most people, I believe, are living with previously learned skills. Meaning, you learn to ride a bike as a kid, you learn to play tennis, maybe you learn to play cricket, but generally, and I'm generalizing, as adults, we're learning, or we're living with previously learned skills. There is a huge amount of research to be said for continuing to tax yourself mentally and physically, learning a new musical instrument, learning to dance or whatever. Well, take what we're doing with martial arts. I mean, nothing could involve the mind body and the integration of both as much as being a martial artist and expanding one's skill set. And that, I think, is just incredible. So instead of going through life like a lot of people do, they go to work, they do their 9 to 5, they go home, they put TV on, they watch the same TV shows, they go to bed, they get up and do exactly the same next day. And all they're doing is waiting until they get to 60 or 65 and they retire, and then they're going to start to live. To which I would say, well, good luck if you happen to make it, first of all. But I said, at least for me and what we do as martial artists, every day I wake up, I have a chance to learn something new. How good is that? You know, to keep your spirit alive, your mind alive. And that gets down to my passion, you know. And as I said to you, that goal, that end goal should never be attainable, but the journey is absolutely attainable. You can keep striving to better yourself in so many areas. And that's what life is about for me, you know.
So you've obviously you've been that guy who has, I mean, having, like, with what you just said, you've taken opportunities as they've come. And, I'm sure if I was to go back to that 11-year-old boy running around in Croydon and to say, this far away, you're going to be doing this, like you're going to be training with the Chuck Norris. You're going to be doing movies with Jackie Chan. You're going to be doing this, and this. Was it just like martial arts has given you so much? Is it just a natural progression, or you just, like you said, to be you got that opportunity to go overseas and travel with Chuck? Like, that was in what, the mid 70s, late 70s?
No, late 70s. 79 is when I
There would
went.
have not been a lot of Australians doing that sort of thing back then.
No, and you know what? And again, usually it's in hindsight. You look at decisions you make. By the way, hindsight, especially when you cheat's a good thing, because hopefully some of the things that you look back on and you extrapolate and realize why you made decisions and the result they had for your life and your betterment, it's a good thing to then be able to pass on to other students, number one. But I realize now, looking back, that that was one of the most important decisions I could have made with my life. See, what people don't know is when I started martial arts, I was still at high school. Then I left and I started working in the immigration department. I used to do interviewing, people wanting to bring relatives out from overseas. So in other words, I did that for 10 years. I had a 9-to-5 job, but I would train every morning and lunchtime. And then, of course, after Zendak, I started training, 6-7 days a week, teaching in the Hombu and Elizabeth Street, etc. And that sort of is my life. But I don't, when I left, and it was really Linda Ronstadt, and a lot of the younger ones don't probably know who Linda was. She was as big as Beyonce in her day. She had 12 Grammys, rock and roll, country and western. I started working with her, which of course is through Bob. We did bodyguard work for her. And she was the one, after I worked with her in Australia, she said, look, she wanted me to come out and work for her full time in California. And I was like, oh, I don't really want to do that. I'm teaching clubs. I've got a girlfriend here. I've got a job. That was a huge decision, And she said one thing to me, and I still remember so clearly. She said, look, just why don't you try it? You can always go back home.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, you know what? I can just do that. Why not? Why not jump out of my comfort zone and give it a try? And it was scary, because I was brought up with a mum that was about saving up your superannuation and job security and make sure all of that sort of stuff, holiday pay. That was my indoctrination. So to suddenly resign my job and just go over in a completely different environment was a little scary, but off I went. Well, God, you know yourself, what my life has become as a result of daring to participate, I call it, daring to step out of my comfort zone and give something a go was a massive thing for me, and it changed my life forever. And but you don't know at the time, you often you talk about, oh, would you ever think you'd work with Chuck Norris? How could you? People dream. You might have dreams of working with so and so or training with so and so, and words and thoughts and everything have energy. You can manifest and you can create certain realities. I get that. But you never tend to do stuff at the time understanding or anticipating what that could lead to or what that's going to feel like 10 years after the fact.
I mean,
it's like the movie with Jackie Chan. I was in Atlanta, and it's only when I did my first movie with Jackie Chan, off I go. For me, it was just another job. Oh, great. I get to work and I get paid for a few months. And yeah, I know this guy and he's amazing and everything. It's only 20 years later when I'm talking to one of the stunt guys who just love all those movies. Their eyes are like this. And they're like, look, that's history. You have worked with one of the greatest action, martial artists ever. And you've worked with Chuck Norris. It's only then you go, yeah, wow, that is pretty cool, But it's
again, like you said, for you, it's a job. You're like,
sometimes you don't realize how important that might be in your life story 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the line. It's usually what's going on in the present for most people, I believe. Eckhart Tolle, I love listening to Eckhart Tolle, who, wrote a book with The Whole New Earth and all that. He's all about being in the moment and everything. And he said, you know, all this past, whether I'm talking to you about training with Chuck, Jackie Chan, blah, 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 Tina, it's a story. It's just a story. And yes, it's fun and it's good and everything, but the only thing that is real is what's happening today, right now in this moment. How do you feel? What do you do? It's like when I hear martial arts, oh, I used to do that, I used to do all that, and they're sitting there and they're out of shape and they're all fat, they haven't trained in years. And I go, well, I don't understand really the relevance of that. Yes, it's an interesting story, but how are you today? You know, what are you doing today to impact your life, improve your knowledge bank, and become a better sort of representation of a human being? I think that's what's important.
And I think it's that we've had conversations about this in the past on that subject. It's a case of, it's not looking at how good we were. It's about trying to focus on how good we are, and that chipping away. But for you, it was, I guess, like you said, you're an example, and you would have encountered that person who you speak to and they go, I'm going to be this and this, I'm going to be this champion, I'm going to do this. But for you, it was just a case of, that opportunity comes, yeah, I'll take that. That opportunity comes, I'll take that. And however many years down the track, you know, you write this list of everything you've achieved, or you look at what you've done, you go, that just came from getting up every day and getting on with it.
Yeah, and of course, you know, there's so many opportunities I look back on and go, wow, that was a missed opportunity. But
Yep.
that's okay. You know, it's like movies. You know, I believe I probably could have ended up working in more like what they call A-grade movies, you know, by not being just anxious to have a job. But I also realized that my passion was martial arts. Doing a movie for me was a way to earn enough money to then spend X more time in the school, in the dojo, in the academy learning. You know, it wasn't about being a movie star per se. It was just a sort of an economic means, you know, a means to an end. And so because I also realized that if I wanted to really be that sort of actor, then I would have been spending as much time in an acting class as I was in a martial arts class. And I was comfortable with that because I still enjoyed what I did working in the Philippines, Thailand, all over the world, did 60 plus movies. A lot of them, again, might be a bit shit. I might want to see again, but it was an amazing experience, you know, and I met so many amazing people. So that journey is, again, what makes it so rich for me, you know.
I guess you don't know what that experience is like until you do it a lot of the time, is it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, and by the way, don't get me wrong, I'm totally for goal setting, for people having aspirations of doing this training with this particular person. Absolutely have those dreams, because, you know, I have a saying that, you know, you can create, you can be your own invention. That was that whole imagery sort of thing we did, one of the posts a little while ago, that you can be your own invention, you know,
Yeah.
because everything that manifests usually starts as an idea in somebody's head. So create those dreams, create those goals, work on them intensely, and who knows, you know, what that end result is and how that's going to manifest in your life and what you do. Because they say that focusing on those thoughts and the intensity of a particular goal, if you do it in every possible detail, will then put you almost like on automatic pilot, where you will start to do things in your life day by day that will set you like a guided missile towards achieving that visual image, that goal that you have in your mind. You know, I'm a total
Absolutely.
believer in that also.
Yeah. No, look, yeah, I guess, like you said, I would say probably in a sentence, your life has been a series of just taking opportunities and just seeing where they will take you. And I mean, now you probably sit back and, like you said, you're not anywhere near in the box just yet. So there's still opportunities that'll be there to take when all this is,
Oh,
when else is done.
yeah, yes, because it really, for me, it's absolutely about quality of life, Carl. It's not about longevity. I don't want to be 95 and can't walk and need care and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, as we know, that's not necessarily up to me, but to a certain degree it is, you know. So all I'm going to do is try and stay as healthy as I can. You know, I'm on a vegan diet at the moment, which just suits me. It's not something I would preach to anybody, but I'm doing everything I possibly can and using my martial arts to hopefully give me quality of life and longevity. So even if I should only live another 5 years, at least on that 5th year, should I drop dead, I will be actively doing what I love.
Yeah.
You know, I love to tell the story, and I've told you this before with, you know, it really struck me when Jorge Gracie was talking about his dad, Helio Gracie, who's the kind of one of the godfathers, along with Carlos, you know, as you know, with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And when he said to me, he said, my dad was still doing drills at 94 years of age, which was a year before he died at 95. And I remember thinking, how fucking good is that?
Yeah.
To be still actively every day being involved in your life passion up until virtually the day you die.
Yeah.
To me, that's gold. That's what it's all about.
It ain't over till it's over.
You know, and you
So,
decide, you know, you make that decision a lot of the time. Yes, sometimes it's taken out of your hands, of course, you know, whether you believe in God or whatever it is, but within reason, at least have an attitude that you are going to live every day as though it's your last.
Yep.
You know, that's an incredibly important mindset. That's what I'm trying to do. Am I always successful? Of course not. I have stresses and worries and negativity like everybody else, but I'm trying. I'm just trying to sort of make myself a little better each day. Luckily, Judy's out of the room. She probably fainted.
Because I was going to say, before we move into the next question, and I did warn you that I would run into the trap of talking to you forever. I'm trying to put this I'm trying to word this as best as I can. Do you feel that because of who you are, what you've achieved, like, you know, everything that you've done, I mean, there is still going to be those elements of friends that you're just, this is just me, mate, this is my mate Rich. But do you feel that because of you're up here in certain circles, people forget that you've got shit going on like everyone else? Like, oh, I've got to pay that, I've got to do this, I've got to see that guy, I've got that appointment. Do you think people forget that when, you know, when they put people up here, they forget that they've all got those real life things as well?
You forget that they're actually human.
Yes,
Well,
yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Of course they do, you know, and unfortunately that's a reason, like with, you know, there's so much celebrity worship. There's almost a reason why people gravitate towards the shit that goes on in a celebrity's life, because it's finally their way of being reminded, you do go through the same things that I do. They almost relish that a star with wealth should lose everything or have a heart attack or whatever it might be, or have a divorce, you know. There's a weird kind of thing that says to people, you're human after all, you know. When
you've worked with some big names, and are there moments where you go, oh yeah, that's right, you are a normal person, or you go, if you could see what I see, maybe you would understand a little bit more of their lives and what they go through?
Yeah, I make a point of seeing the normality in the people I work with.
Treat them like a person.
Yes, and I also not demand, but I try and kind of command the same respect back, you know, meaning that there are some people, especially in acting, you know, the industry creates monsters a lot of the time. Why? Because if you're in a position of making a studio or whatever a lot of money, that will do anything. That will appease any sort of bad behavior. In other words, bad behavior is often rewarded. And I'm in a position, I made a decision a long time ago. If I'm training someone like a Scarlett Johansson, you know, to drop a name, who's just lovely, you know, but I try and put it across that I've basically been doing what I do as a martial artist twice as long as you've been alive, twice as long as you've been on the planet to become what I've become. And I'm not saying this about Scarlett, don't get me wrong, but it could be, oh yeah, somebody could be an actor because it's just pretty and they've learned to utter a few lines, you know. Obviously, a lot of them are a lot more depth than that with their careers and what they do. But my point being that I say I've achieved equally, if not more than you've ever achieved. So we should be on the same level here, you know. I'm here to make you better on screen at what you're going to do. For instance, in a fight scene, you know, that's my job. If you're not going to give me 100%, then I'm not going to waste my time, you know. That's a sort of a feeling. That doesn't mean I won't treat them with the respect due, because if you take a job on a movie, you're always at a certain level on a call sheet, and it's just the nature of the game that there's a pecking order. It'd be like being a sergeant in the army and you up against a colonel. You think you're better than him, but you will still behave with a certain amount of respect due. but I just try and look at them as humans, because I have had a chance, and Bob's the same, when we traveled with the rock and roll bands, you get a chance to see the person. Most of the public get to see the image that that artist has created and the way they want to be perceived. Like a David Bowie, you know, they see this guy back in the Ziggy Stardust days, and he's got makeup and all this and orange hair, and he's a bit, you know, asexual and all this sort of stuff. So they have a certain image. But when you work with the guy, that you realize that's, yes, for that 2 hours on stage, but then you get to go home and hang around and watch TV and chat with the person. And what you see is a regular person. He was so friggin' intelligent and well read. He was like a distinguished English gentleman off stage, nothing like that. Or you get a Keith Richards, you know, when Bob and I worked with the Rolling Stones in 73, 2 or 3 or whatever it was, I realized, you know, that you see the drug, sex, and the rock and roll. What you miss is the person and the passion. What I would see in a Keith Richards or something is the passion that he has had and still has as a musician. I just watched Doco on Netflix about Keith, you know, and however he is, he's got to be close to 80 or mid, whatever he is, but that passion has never changed. He's just passionate about being a musician, songwriting, the history of his music, and being the best he can be. Well, that's what a fantastic thing is, you know. So yes, getting back to your original question, you know, it's very easy to look at people and assume like that you can define them when you were probably so far off, it's ridiculous. And even with their misbehavior, blame the industry they're in as much as the actual person, because I would defy anyone to suddenly have millions of dollars, a huge house, girls falling all over them, to then not behave in other than what we consider the normal manner anyway. I mean, you know.
Yeah, that's it's a setup. It's a setup there. But yeah, I guess you work on a principle. You want to treat others, you know, treat others as you want to be treated yourself.
And I'll tell you one thing too, most artists, you know, that I've worked with, they want somebody to treat them like just a mate or another, just someone to hang with. Otherwise, they've all got to keep their airs up and everything and be other than what they are. You know, you know, part of my job, and, you know, when I'm working on film sets, is to just have them feel that all I am is a friend that's trying to help them be the best they can be, you know. And I'll joke with them, you know, I would say to start, or even Margot, you know, Margot Robbie, who's just the loveliest person to work with, the most down-to-earth person. But I would say, look, if you throw a punch, you know, on camera and everything, it's shit. I'm just going to tell you that's shit. And I love that, you know. I mean, Scarlett used to look across and sometimes I go, what the fuck was that? You know, just laugh and go, oh my God, you know, but that's kind of the relationship that I try to at least form with them. You know, some you can't do it. Some admittedly are so up themselves you won't get there, but then I'm not going to waste my time anyway, you know.
You don't have to worry about them because you're not going to work with them.
No.
So, Mr. Norton, I guess you know, there would be stuff that we would assume here, but what is something that you are passionate about?
Aside from what I talk about, you know, I'm passionate about
Judy happy.
Yeah, right. Not getting bashed by my wife. That's what I'm passionate about. How do I achieve that? You know, that's a journey by itself. No, I'm just still, you know, the obvious thing, and I'd say, and I really mean is, I'm passionate about martial arts. You know, I'm passionate about learning. I'm passionate about just increasing my knowledge bank. But I'm also, it's sort of a weird thing to say, but I'm also passionate about putting it in perspective at this stage of my life. You know, when you know, I used to laugh and I'd say to Bob, stop saying, you know, oh, well, you went away and you just did movies for 30 years. Well, the inference from that is that I didn't do any training. The truth is that I trained more when I went to the States than I'd ever trained here, because I would do 2 movies a year that involved, 6-week shoots. The rest of the time, I was training with all these people I mentioned, Fumio Demura and Benny Akitas and Bill Wallace and Chuck Norris every morning. In other words, it was non-stop, you know, for all those years over in America of learning. You know, that was my passion. That's what I wanted to do. But nowadays, my passion is yes, having that and having that learning and everything, but I'm trying to understand that that passion will always bear and drive me, but I'm trying to put it in balance, you know? Like people say, but you're talking about COVID-19, this being a part on that. I got to tell you, I love my shutdown at the moment. And I don't want to be selfish here because I understand people have lost jobs and everything. Please don't think I don't see the, you know, the sadness in that. And I obviously don't want this to last too long. I'm talking personally. But to be at home with my soulmate, you know, it's my wife, goodness, you know, it's hard to get better than that. You know, I'm getting to sit in the couch and with TV on, I can do a bit of training when I feel like. And so I'm trying to just put it all in balance. And the old saying, smell the roses, you know, I don't have to be an elite athlete anymore. My job is not so much to be an elite athlete as much as somebody that can hopefully pass on information and help a younger martial artist on their journey become a better martial artist, you know? So I don't
There
have
was
to be, I'm sorry?
there was work you were meant to have on, and that's been postponed, hasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, and when I came back, I was supposed to go straight onto a movie. A friend of mine was producing. I would have been working the last 2 months, but that got, obviously it's on hold. And I'm not unhappy about that because, you know, I've been 7 months in Atlanta working on Suicide Squad. And that's 14-hour days for me. And I thought, I long for the downtime.
Because
So say,
we
careful
spoke
what you
about
wish
that.
for. Yeah, careful what you wish for. I come home and I've got downtime. So I love the idea of that. And I was very happy the movie got put back. It will go when everything loosens up and away we'll go again. But I just realized now that what I don't want to do is just have continual stress and drama in my life. And Judy and I have a saying that anything or anyone that doesn't add value to our lives, I wish you all the best, but stay the fuck away, you know? And that includes certain jobs. You know, people always say, oh, working on a movie or doing Jackie Chan, that must have been fun. No, it's not fun. It's work, you know. You are asked to be as excellent as you could be at whatever it is they've hired you to do.
It would have been highly stressful, wouldn't it? Like you would have had this demand, like I have to measure up to this guy or that guy, and you know,
hey,
I hope I don't fuck anything up.
of course, every day there's an expectation. That's why you're being paid the bucks you're being paid, you know. Or if I have to go and do Suicide Squad and I've got to put together 30 fights and they want everything to be different to anything that's been done before. Well, good luck with that, you know.
No
That's
problem.
stressful. You know, of course, anyone would find stress in that. And by the way, that stress, which to me is kind of a little bit of fear, is a good thing. I love to quote Gus D'Amato, you know, fear is a friend of extraordinary people. And, you know, it propels you to study more, to train more, and to do whatever it is to allay those fears, to be able to come up to whatever, you know, that job demands. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's still stressful. So I want the balance of coming home where I don't have to do a damn thing if I don't want to do it today or tomorrow, you know?
Just want to
That's the
disappear.
balance. That's why I said before that so many people are waiting 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now to actually start living and actually start enjoying life and get out of the toil or what Buckminster Fuller calls the struggle of making a living. Because the struggle of making a living gets in the way of life itself and the enjoyment of life, because that usually means you're doing something you don't necessarily want to be doing. Not all the time. Again, I'm generalizing, but not all the time. But that's it. This is why, and I get back to Buckminster Fuller, his whole thing and his whole life, and this guy was a genius. He invented the geodesic dome. He came up with a mathematical equivalence of synergy, I'm sorry, et cetera, et cetera. And he decided that he needed, with his life, to find what he was absolutely meant to do with his life. And he believed if he found, you know, the answer to that and what he was absolutely meant to do and to go not for money, not for wealth, not for fame, not for his ego, but what he was actually meant to do, that the universe would take care of him, often, sometimes just in the nick of time.
Yeah.
A really interesting premise. And he also realized that if he found what he was meant to do, or one found what they were meant to do, there was a precessional effect, meaning there was a 90-degree effect that would benefit the universe. And this gets a bit deep, but if one example would be a bee flying to a flower, and it's coming like this. And the bee's after the pollen, you know, and the nectar and all this sort of stuff. And meanwhile, at 90 degrees, he's got his little legs hanging down and getting all this sticky shit all over him, which is pollen. And off the bee would go to get more nectar from the next flower. And his little legs would drop the pollen. Pollination, you know, it involves life. In other words, all the bee needed to do was get the nectar. The 90-degree effect and benefit of the universe was his legs picking up the little sticky particles. Well, you think of what we're doing as martial artists, as teachers, that the parallel for me is, you know, you get out and teach a lot of times. First of all, you just want to be the best martial artist you can be, and you want to practice. And then you become a teacher. And now you're on the floor, and now you're teaching. But you still just want to be the best martial artist, and all you want to do is give martial arts knowledge. The 90-degree effect of your goal and your drive is that you're maybe giving a kid confidence. You're giving him aspirations. You're giving him a dream of maybe becoming an actor like you have, et cetera, et cetera. That's a processional effect. How interesting is that, you know? Anyway, so look, again, it's just trying to find that balance, and, you know, we find it. You talked about troubles. I mean, 2008 killed Judy and I, 2008 to 10, you know, the global financial crash. And, you know, we had a couple of condos over there. I lost like 300 grand in property stuff. And I got to a stage, and I don't mind admitting this, where with credit card debt and everything, I thought I could live another 3 lifetimes and I'm not going to be able to get out of this, you know?
It's real for everyone.
Yeah, and it's amazing. And I never thought I would say this, but I actually said to Judy once, I said, I actually get why somebody would put a gun in their mouth. Because trying to sort of think, it gets to where you actually get a taste of like such a difficulty, such a thing that's confronting in your life, and you have no answers to it. Yeah. But I tell you what, at this stage, I am so pleased that I was given that lesson, because it gives me so much compassion and understanding. Even look at COVID-19, when you see these lines of cars, people with no food, you know, no jobs and everything. And I go, I get that, you know, and it gives you such empathy, you know, and such feeling for these people, having gone through it myself, you know. So
yeah, that's it. And like you said, it's as real for you, and you can relate just like anyone else. I mean, what you've done in your life doesn't mean that you don't have empathy or anything like that for what people are going through right now. Moving on, Mr. Norton, your bucket list.
Yeah, no,
I'd love to hear this.
No, well, you know what? It's a bit of a boring answer, because I honestly feel I'm living my bucket list. You know, I've been blessed that, you know, since going over the States and everything, I've worked in so many different countries in the world. I did a movie in Kazakhstan. God, that's Borat country, you know. I was up on mountaintops with an old guy with eagles. He had 12 eagles that he sort of bred since they were chicks, and he would use the eagles. He was in his 80s with his son, and these eagles would go out and hunt rabbits and foxes, and they'd get the meat and he'd get the fur and make hats and pelts and everything. And I remember sitting there and going, how many people get to see this? This is where Genghis Khan roamed, you know, and I'm there. And another time I was working in Lithuania 6 months a year, 4 years, for 4 years, 6 months a year. And there was one day I'm in this forest. It was like a new adventures of Robin Hood, you know, and horseback and all sorts of battles and everything on horses. And I remember sitting again with Judy, and we're sitting in these bushes and we're picking blueberries, you know, with these horses. And I'm going in this unbelievably beautiful Bavarian forest in Lithuania. I'm like, and I'm getting paid for this, you know? So I guess I would say that in hindsight, I'm living a bucket list that most people would dream for, you know.
But there'd be many moments, like I said, and again, this was the answer that I assumed that I would get. You would have countless moments, like, again, take out the stresses of the job and everything else, you know, like the real world stuff. But you would have, I mean, and we all have them, but you would have your own scenarios where, like you said, you just sit back and you just go, How fucking good is this?
Yeah,
You
but
know?
Carl, hear that? The important thing is to be actually in the moment and be
Yep.
aware of that moment. So many people, it just passes them by because their heads are full, as Eckhart was said, of stories of, oh, what am I going to do? I can't pay the rent, da, 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 da. There's all this mess going on in here rather than sometimes just taking a breath and going, you know what? This is not too fucking bad, you know? I mean, and I've had plenty, look at Mad Max, I end up in Africa. I've always that way. If you talk about a bucket list, was going to Africa. So, I just obsessed with Animal Planet and all these shows and elephants and all those sorts of animals. And suddenly I'm in Africa. We go to it turned out one of the stunt guys' parents had a ranch where they would kind of take injured lion and stuff like that. And anyway, we end up playing with these little lion cubs, and we're rolling around and going with these lion cubs. And again, I'm like, how many people get to do
Yep.
this, So it's been fantastic. So I would like to say, and again, I'm not gloating because we've had ridiculous hardship and, losses and everything else, like everybody else.
I think it's okay to be proud of what you've achieved too.
Yeah, losing my mum, all that sort of stuff. But there's so much to be thankful for, and again, for me, that's the bucket list that I'm living in. I'm continuing to live it, and hopefully it's going to go on for a lot more years. I'd love, by the way, to go back to Africa. I'd love to just spend a lot more time there. I was just fascinated with that place. But anyway, yeah, it's an bucket list, my friend.
No, that's awesome. So I guess we've set parameters here just so our viewers know for the next question about the current situation in the world. We are not to talk about a leader whose surname starts with the letter T, because Richard's green tea is not in arm view, and neither is blood pressure tablets. And see, I made the mistake of doing this in a phone call about a week and a half ago, and I've just gone, oh, I'm so sorry. So the world at this moment, Richard, is in an interesting time. You've lived in the States, you've lived in other countries, you've probably seen a lot, you've had a lot to do with different cultures. How would you sum up what's happening at the moment? And I guess, what is something that you're really going to take away from it? I mean, we won't get involved in political discussions too much, but we've had discussions in the past about maybe some countries could be doing more, maybe some countries could be doing less. But what do you reckon? How do you reckon things are going at the present point?
Oh, it's obviously tragic for the world and so many people. I mean, again, who could have foreseen something like this? I mean, God, I'd probably get into trouble for saying this, but and being simplistic, but shit happens, I mean, there's been so many times in the evolution of the planet, everything that's been amazing events happen has had drastic consequences for life as we know it, and this is one of them. It's a bit of an unknown. I just we totally feel, for reasons, as I said, of what Judy and I went through in the economic collapse. I know what it's like to suddenly feel like you've lost everything and not have any idea how you're going to get out of this. For some people, of course, there's no real answer in, especially when they've lost loved ones, But I've lost loved ones, not to COVID-19. We all have, that's just part of the nature of it, but we will get through it, that's the nature of life and being a human. We will get through it. It will become a memory. It'll be not a nice memory, but will become a memory eventually. They'll come up with a vaccine. They'll come up with a remedy. Look at New Zealand, they're already talking about eliminating, and I'm not sure what that means. I think it means they just haven't had any positive tests, over the last whatever days. But there will be an end to it, and I again, what can I say? Shit happens, mate, and it's horrible, One would hope that there's a learning curve, I don't want to get too deep into this, but especially my wife, she's a vegan, she's an animal lover. There's a lot of origins of whether it's SARS or a lot of these diseases and pandemics have come from animals and the abuse of animals. I look at the wet markets in Wuhan. talk about whether they originated there. There's every possibility they did, you know, if you knew the real life of it. And you would sort of go, well, hold on, you know, is nature trying to teach us a lesson? That's a bit too deep and meaningful for me to get into. You know, that's the way Judy would think about it. So there's lessons to be had for everybody, you know, about behavior and how we treat the planet in general. And I think that's a lesson well worth looking at, you know. Again, I would probably upset a lot of people, but don't really care, you know. It being going through this and talking about the origins of certain disease, whether it comes from bats or anteaters or whoever knows what, you know, there is a relationship to that abuse of other life, you know, that exists on the planet with us. And I think we've got to be careful with that. If people only could actually be a part of the process by which food ends up on their plate, you know, if they were the ones in, you know, creating whatever environment it is to produce that food, I would hope they'd have a lot more empathy for animals and things like that and the treatment of. I'm not saying that you can't, that, you know, you need a source, you know. We can argue about how essential it is to eat sort of meat and everything else. And again, that's totally up to the individual, but it's more the treatment. And, you know, and I'm hoping that something like this will cause a little bit of awareness, again, of the planet in general, and also how fragile we really are, you know, as a species. You get a virus like this, as suddenly, as they say, the virus has no borders, you know, it doesn't just go by country, which is evident by its spread throughout the world. That's a pretty scary truth. So maybe even just to show how vulnerable we can be as a species and how we need to look after each other and be aware of the way we live and the way we coexist, you know, in this environment. All of that could be a positive outcome, maybe. You know?
Definitely. And the fact we maybe, yeah, without sounding arrogant, we're not as good as we think we were or we are. But you know, we're still able to be affected. Like you said, I was actually I gave in and I listened to a bit of news this morning. The numbers dead in the US as of this recording. It is now more than the American lives lost in the Vietnam War.
Yes.
When you look at it in that sort of perspective, you go, holy shit. You know, like it is real. And I think for maybe a little while we were sort of going, oh, is this really worth all the hassle that we're putting it in? And when you look at that sort of thing, you go, yeah, this is full on, and we're not out of the woods yet.
Well, you know, human beings like to think of themselves as the center of the universe. I've got news for them. You could take every human being off this planet and it would survive. So
we will do just fine. Yeah.
All and end all. You know, the animal population would survive, the plant life would survive, Earth would survive without being leached and bleached and everything else. So maybe you're not as important as you think you are. So again, it just sort of puts it all in a little perspective, one would think.
And it's amazing how quickly in the shutdowns that the planet is already relishing the reward. So like you've got dolphins appearing in Venice, you've got smog levels have gone down. Like in some Asian countries, they can now see mountains that for the last 25 years they haven't been able to see.
And you can actually see it everywhere, you know. Now I know pollution levels are at an all-time low. So all of that, yes, interesting. But again, you're at least being aware of it. I would hope people would take notice of those little aspects, you know, and indicators of human behavior and what our behavior creates, you know, as far as an imbalance in the world. And
is there anything, sorry, you keep going.
No, I've got to stop on all that
stuff. is there anything?
No, well, it sounds preachy, and I don't mean to be, because honestly, you can only choose. You know, again, it's like I grew up eating meat. Don't get me wrong. I'm trying veganism as much for health as anything else, but I'm also, again, becoming very aware of at least the treatment, you know, and the respect, you know, for an animal will become something that ends up in your plate. But, you know, it's just, it's just having, I don't know, it's just having that respect, you know. For
No, it's a good way of looking at it. And I might say, I think you're the first person I've interviewed that has had that bit of a take on it. that maybe it's reminded us that, where we may really sit in the planet structure of things isn't where we may believe we sit. Like we are still,
We're part, we are part of the ecosystem, to observe how birds and reptiles and insects and fish and bigger fish feed on little fish. We look at all that, but we tend to take ourselves out of the equation. Well, no, you're a part of that ecology. You're a part of that equation, So
definitely
have a realistic look at how you fit in. As I keep saying, you could take every human off this planet and it would do just fine. So really, you're the center of the universe,
it would probably do better. What do you? So I guess the last question is: there anything like, and we've spoken a lot about you taking opportunities as they come, rolling with it, not missing out on what could happen, and not thinking just I'm going to give this a go, see where it takes me. Is there anything you might do different once everything is restored back to whatever normality ends up being?
I don't think so, Kyle, to be honest. I don't think I would do much differently. Again, hopefully, though I don't think I do that anyway, but again, one would not take things for granted so much. The opportunities you have to do whatever it is you do and like to do.
Yeah.
Going to the beach, or enjoying a walk in the mountains, or hanging out with friends. I think it's just an opportunity. Once it's taken away from you, you sort of realize the importance or not of some of those things, and hopefully again it'll just make people a little aware of how fortunate they can be, in a future time when this COVID-19 is under control and we're not under that same duress.
Do you think the entertainment industry, or your side of the entertainment industry, is going to have to, introduce some new things, or have to maybe rethink a few things to get itself moving again?
Oh, it'll take a while because there's going to be a lot of fear. It's like, it's like ending lockdown. Well, very well for governors, or, say in the States or whatever, to say, oh, we want everything to reopen. Well, that doesn't mean people are going to come, Like I'm very nervous about sitting in the picture theater right now,
Absolutely.
I have no idea who they're interacted with, whether they're asymptomatic in their carriers or whatever. So in other words, that fear is going to change behavior anyway for a certain amount of time. And I think that's a good thing. It's even the idea of everybody shaking hands. I think, well, maybe it's not a bad thing that we're not so habitual in this handshake, because they say whether it's a flu or whatever and bacteria, that's one of the best ways to transmit, infection. Coughing, covering your mouth, all that sort of stuff. Coughing into your elbow rather than into your hand, that now you touch doorknobs and phones and keys and everything else. So there's lessons to be learnt, should one be aware of it. And I think that's not a bad thing. It'll change behavior. As far as the entertainment, yes, it'll take a little while, but I believe it will get back to normal. And, unfortunately or fortunately, money, success, all of that has a way of kind of catapulting people into that sort of that lifestyle again. But I just think it'll take a little time. But again, with some of the things I mentioned, I don't think it's a bad thing that we maybe change some things in the way we do it.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing.
No, I think yeah, I really like the slant you've taken on that, which is a little bit different. And I guess it's probably from, like you said, it's someone who's maybe seen a little bit of a different side to the world that maybe a lot of others have seen. Look, so I think we'll tee it up there, because, as I said, I'll fall into this trap of talking to you for another 3 or 4 hours. And I'm sure Judy's got something for you to do, or she'll find something for you to do. I'll
decide what I do.
Bullshit. She's behind you, mate. Those people watching, I had a very interesting conversation with Richard a few weeks ago now, when I got in trouble for dodging a couple of his phone calls. Coincidentally, that's why I'm back to Greenbelt. I tried to call him back, but he was up on the roof You were up on the roof. You admitted it. Come on. And he said he was getting stuff ready for Judy's birthday. But he did mention he had quite a pair of short stubbies or something on, so he's not sure if he was giving the neighbours a little bit of a show. And I said, it's just, I don't know. I don't mean to downplay. I never mean to question your age, but I do wonder if that's something that a man of your age should still be doing. But there's other stuff.
Wearing shorts or being up on the roof? What are you trying to say?
No, definitely the first one. I'm not Judy. I don't get to say that you should keep a shirt on and you look like a kettlebell.
Oh dear. Hey, you gotta have a. You know what's important? You gotta have a good laugh at yourself, Kyle. Eh?
I think you do. I think you need to. As you say, you need to stop and smell the roses.
Yes.
But Richard, thank you very much. I said it to you a couple of weeks ago. I am very, very grateful of the relationship that we have developed. I take my demotion with pride. But no, you're a good friend. You're an inspiration to so many, including myself. And I want to thank you for your time. And I'm sure everyone's going to have a great listen to this. So thank you, mate.
Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate that very much. You know, and just for everybody out there, you know, you sort of talk of like, well, maybe myself, Bob, and that can be role models. Just there's a big thing that I say about role models. Role models are as much about learning what you'd like to do as it is about what you would never want to do. You know, there are a lot of things that you can get from role models that you can learn to teach you the lesson, as I said, of the negatives. You know, there's a lot of things that I used to look up to in people. I go, wow, I want to be that and that, but I also never want to be that part of that person. Keep that in mind, you know, when you sort of get into adulation or adoring somebody, you know, look at it from a very realistic point of view of the lessons learned. As I said, role models are there to teach you what you don't necessarily want to do. There's an old saying with role models, you know, you can be famous and a role model, you know, but it doesn't mean, you know, that that you deserve that mantle. You know, there's a lot of famous people who become role models just by the fact that they're famous, you know.
Yeah.
There's a big responsibility taking on a mantle of a role model, you know, and just be very careful. Be careful of who you look up for, and we could get into a whole other way, you know.
Yeah. No,
Anyway.
that's a good one to be on. Maybe our next interview, Richard. I'll keep that in the
Yeah.
bank.
Thank you,
All right.
Carlo. I enjoy it always, my friend. So thank you, and thanks for everybody out there in listening land and everything. And listen, it's all food for thought. You know, you don't have to agree with anything I say. If I get you thinking about something, then mission accomplished. That's the way I look at it. But
that's it. That's the mission accomplished. Thank you, Richard. Always a pleasure, my friend. And
appreciate the friendship, my friend. We'll talk soon.
we will. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, mate.